attention is awareness plus an object. When awareness no longer shines the light of its attention on an object, that attention vacillates for a moment, seeking an object to rest upon, and without finding one, it sinks back into its source and is revealed as pure awareness. In other traditions it is referred to as focusing on the I am. But it's not a focusing of the attention. It is a relaxation of the attention, a sinking of the attention into its source. Its source is just being aware. Being aware. The two essential ingredients of our self, to be and to be aware. This aware being that we essentially are doesn't require a body or a mind in order to know itself. It just knows itself by itself. Simply by being itself, it knows itself. This is everybody's experience, everybody's simple, obvious, intimate experience. Although it is usually overlooked, veiled or forgotten due to the exclusive focus of our attention on objects. So here we just relax that focus of attention and allow that attention to sink back into its source, where it is revealed as the pure I am, aware being. Notice how resting in the heart in this way, the mind may become restless, agitated, bored, and as a result rise again in the form of attention and go outwards towards an object. Gently return the mind to its source. Allow the attention to fall back into the awareness from which it rises. Now the mind may object and say it requires some kind of effort to return the mind to its source, whereas attending to objects is effortless. In fact, it's the opposite. It is only because we have become so accustomed to losing ourselves in objects that it has, over the years, seemed to become natural. And therefore we seem to have to make an effort to turn the mind round towards its source. The peace, or the happiness, which is just another name for peace, that all human beings long for, is in fact simply the peace of their own essential self, which lies ever present, always available, at the heart of all experience. It is only because our inherently peaceful nature of pure awareness rises in the form of attention, that is, rises in the form of the mind, and becomes mixed up with the objects of the body, mind and world, that is, thoughts, sensations and perceptions. That this inherent peace of our true nature seems to be lost, forgotten, veiled or overlooked. But all these refer to the same non-objective experience that each one of us intimately knows, simply abiding in and as the aware being that we inherently are. Awareness, the suffix ness, means the being or the presence of. So the word awareness means the being or the presence of that which is aware. So the word awareness combines being and knowing. Aware being or being aware. I sometimes use the word knowing instead of awareness because it prevents the subtle objectivization of awareness. Awareness being a noun. So I sometimes use the word knowing, as many of you know. So when I use the word knowing, I mean exactly the same as what is traditionally meant by the word awareness, this combination of knowing and being. Being aware or aware being. That's what we essentially are. It is that element of our experience that never disappears, which is commonly called I. So I use the words knowing, awareness, and consciousness always synonymously.
I guess what I'm asking is, are we consciousness itself?
Yes.
The unbounded, the limitless, the boundaryless consciousness?
Yes. But my answering yes to your question won't really help you. It will encourage you, perhaps, but what will really answer that question for yourself is your own experience of yourself as that. For instance, what would you have done if I had answered no to your question? Or what would you have done if I answered, I don't know, to your question? And as a result, neither confirmed nor denied your suggestion. What would you have done then?
Well, to start with, I would have believed you.
Well, thank you for saying that, because that gives me the opportunity on the first morning to say this. And please, I mean this seriously. I'm not just saying it. I really mean this. I strongly recommend you don't believe anything I say, and I really mean that. In fact, if you had a choice to believe something I said or not to believe it, I strongly recommend you don't believe it. And that you take what I say as a possibility that may or may not be true, pending your own verification. So your question was, are we this ever-present, unlimited consciousness? So tell us now about your experience of yourself, because that's all that matters. Your knowledge of yourself.
When I get still and quiet and try to experience that, for much of the time, I experience something I call experiencing now. And it's the peace.
I don't want to know about much of the time. I only want to know about your experience of yourself now. That's the question.
Well, it's a very unfamiliar thing. And it's something I'm coming in contact with and experiencing.
When you say,
but it's not,
when you say, I'm coming in contact with it, you refer to yourself, I. Tell us about that I.
I don't know what you want me to tell you about that I.
Anything you can tell us from your experience about what you currently refer to as I. Your question was, am I eternal, infinite consciousness? That was your question.
Yes.
Am I eternal, infinite consciousness. So now we're exploring I. I'm trying to give you an experiential answer to your question. I'm trying to, or more accurately, I'm trying to provide the means or the pathway whereby you might discover for yourself whether or not you are eternal, infinite consciousness, because that was your question. So my question to you is, take the thought I, take what you consider to be yourself, and tell us about it. To be honest, I don't really want you to tell us about it. I want you to go there. But in order to check that you are going to what I call I want you to tell us about it, because when you tell us about it, I'll know whether you are really going to I or not.
Yeah, I cannot put that into words.
Do your best. I can't either, but nevertheless I manage to find words. However inadequate they may be, but do your best to put it into words. Try to find words that, as accurately as possible, describe what you refer to as I.
The understanding of that I results in silence.
Okay, I like that answer. So just go deeply into that silence and you'll find the answer to your question.
There has been a pattern of my whole life of rushing in and claiming responsibility for whatever it is that was the agent. So, and I feel that that's been such a source of bondage, to be responsible. And I don't quite understand, what is the acting agent? You said to Noah that creation is just like a piece of jazz music where there are swirling...
Consciousness improvising.
With little
on various different themes. One theme called Valerie, another theme called Michael, another theme called Louise, and all sorts of different themes. It's like a vast symphony with, if you imagine, every musician improvising in a symphony.
Sort of got that today when Alan was playing the crystal bowls, that the bowls could be struck, and then they suddenly bring up this whole array of vibration that dances and plays and reaches different, and that awareness can stand outside and let whatever laws are governing that just take over, and to not feel that there was any agency needed.
Yes, Jean Klein used to describe the one that claims responsibility for the action. He likened it to a clown that comes in after the performance is over and the curtain has dropped. The clown comes on to receive the applause from the audience. He was not present, the clown was not present during the performance, but he comes on to claim the applause afterwards. That is the one that claims doership. I did it.
Intellectually, I understand that, but I still need...
Well, let's talk about your experience. Let's bring it a bit closer to home. Let's talk about your experience now. The thought arose in you, I want to ask a question. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, can you find an entity that chose that thought? Prior to the thought, was there a self there that said, I'm going to choose this thought? Or did the choosing thought simply appear in you awareness?
The thought first appeared in awareness.
After the thought appeared in awareness, the next thought was, I chose that thought. But if you now try to find the I that chose that thought, what happens? You can find the thought, I want to ask a question. Can you find the I that chose that thought?
No.
Well, there is the experiential evidence you're looking for. If you can't find the I that chose the thought, what legitimacy is there to your belief that it is there?
There is no legitimacy.
That's it. It's not just intellectual understanding, it's your experience. You have actually tried, just in this little experiment, you have tried to find the I or the self, the individual I or self that chose the thought, and you couldn't find it. Do that with every, just to convince yourself that this is true, because I don't want to convince you, you have to convince yourself. Do this with a whole number of when an emotion arises. Perform the same experiment. Did I choose, was there a self present that chose that particular emotion or that particular response or this particular sensation? See if you can find the one that chooses, the one that decides, the one that suffers. And if you can't, every time you perform this experiment and you come to this experiential conclusion that I cannot find the separate self that does the choosing or the acting or the relating, every time you discover this, you will erode the old belief in this separate self. The clown is just the thought that says, I did it. That there is no entity in experience that corresponds to the clown.
Right.
It is a fiction. The clown is an illusion. It's not there. But to go back to your question about agency,
the clown is thinking, yes? The clown is the thinking.
No, the clown isn't thinking.
The clown is the thinking.
The clown is the thought, I did it. It's not the person that had the thought, it is just the thought, I did it. But there is no actual entity that the I did it thought refers to. That self is fictitious. But just to go back to what you said about agency, remember, you dream a Caribbean beach within your own mind, you enter into your own imagination as the separate subject of experience, from whose point of view your own mind knows itself as the Caribbean beach. So the dreamed character is the agency through which your mind knows itself as the world. The dreamed character is not an entity or a person in its own right. It is simply a localization of your own mind. So this is what the ego is, the ego, the separate self, or the finite mind. There's nothing wrong with the ego as a localization of consciousness. Indeed, it is the only way it is possible to know the world, is from the perspective of this localization. So as a localization of consciousness, there's nothing wrong with the separate self, the ego, the finite mind. On the contrary, it is the very means through which consciousness manifests itself. What is a problem is that when this localization of consciousness forgets that it is a localization of infinite consciousness and thinks that it is a self unto itself. That's the problem. And that's what causes the sense of separation, the sense of lack, the sense of loss, the sense of suffering. Is it the thoughts that are a problem, or your resistance to the thoughts that is the problem?
The resistance.
And the resistance to your thoughts is a single thought. It's not numerous thoughts. It's just the thought, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's just that's it, yeah? All your suffering is contained in the thought, I don't like it.
Yeah.
So it's not the racing thoughts that are the problem. It's not, in fact, possible to have racing thoughts. You can only have one thought at a time. Can you have more than one thought at a time? Try now to have two thoughts at the same time.
Yeah.
No, so the thoughts may appear in rapidly one after the other, but There's only ever one thought at a time, so that's not a problem, even if they're happening rapidly. It's the only thought that is the problem, is the thought, I don't like it.
It's there a lot. This thought that says, I don't like what's happening
On whose
now.
behalf does that thought arise? Tell us about the self. So tell us about the I in the I don't like it thought. Is it the I of awareness that says that?
No.
What I does the I don't like it thought, on behalf of what other I does the I don't like it thought arise?
I don't know. But it...
Well, you say you don't know, but that's a cop-out. No, you do know. Your thoughts are arising on its behalf. So find out what it is. Don't abdicate. Don't just say, I don't know. Who is the I that says, I don't like it?
I say that.
Tell us about that I that says, I don't like it. I don't like all these thoughts. Describe it to us. Just stay on topic. Describe the I that says, I don't like these thoughts. Don't tell us about the thoughts. Tell us about the I on whose behalf those thoughts arise. Look inside yourself now. Close your eyes now. Look inside yourself and see if you can find the self on whose behalf the I don't like it thought arises.
I can't find it.
Then what happens to the I don't like it thought when the self on whose behalf it supposedly arises cannot be found?
It has to evaporate or stop, right?
Well, so when you wake up tomorrow morning with your thoughts running in your mind, and you feel this old habit of, I don't like it, I think it should be different. I've been meditating for 3 years now, they should have gone away. Ask yourself the question, instead of getting busy trying to do anything with the thoughts, just ask yourself the question, but who is it that is saying this? On whose behalf does the I don't like it thought arise? Try to find that one. Not intellectually, but close your eyes in your experience. Okay, I'm going to be like a real a scientist in the laboratory now. I'm going to look for the I in myself on whose behalf the I don't like it thought arises. And search for it. Don't come to a conclusion too quickly. Don't just superimpose the correct non-dual answer on your experience. Go on, search thoroughly in your own experience. See if you can find it. And if you can't find it, see what happens to the I don't like it thought. And as a result, see what happens to your suffering. We have to see what's the origin of our repetitive thinking. For instance, if there's no reason to think, at any particular moment, if there's no reason to think, you're not investigating a line of inquiry, you're not responding to a practical situation, you're not expressing, sharing, communicating, celebrating your understanding. In other words, there are no reasons, no good reasons to think. So then you have to ask yourself, well, why is your mind perpetually generating thoughts, and why are you following them into the past or the future, or wherever they go? And we will almost always find in these instances of thinking that the purpose of thinking is a kind of smokescreen to distract ourselves from an uncomfortable feeling. And as long as our thinking is taking us into some fantasy or some past or future event. This prevents us from fully feeling the discomfort of this feeling. And in that sense, it's a kind of smokescreen. So what would be interesting then would be not necessary to stop the thinking, but to stop following it wherever it was going, and to become aware of the impulse, the feeling impulse, the discomfort of the feeling that generates this perpetual stream of thinking. And that discomfort is a feeling in the body, and these feelings are immune to rational investigation. That is where this tantric approach, for want of a better phrase, is valuable, the way we explore the sensations of the body, because in this knot of uncomfortable feeling which we were previously not aware of because of the smokescreen of thinking, we now become aware of it, and we explore it in a very similar way to the knot of tension in the stomach that is generated from the feeling of being arrogant or whatever. First of all, you become aware of it, and then it is gradually dissolved in the space of awareness. And as these feelings disappear, so they cease generating thoughts. So we begin to find that there are gaps in the stream of thinking. We still have investigative thoughts that investigate the truth. We still have short thoughts that express and communicate and share our understanding and our love. We still have practical thoughts, but the thoughts whose sole purpose is to avoid discomfort, the discomfort of feelings, or the thoughts whose sole purpose is to perpetuate the belief in being a separate self, those thoughts begin to die down. This mixing of our essential nature of pure awareness with thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions creates what is called the ego, or the separate self. With this apparent mixture of awareness with thoughts and feelings, awareness seems to take on the temporary, limited properties of the body and the mind. That mixture, the mixture of ever-present, unlimited awareness with the temporary, limited qualities of the body-mind, produces the illusory separate self. It is on behalf of this illusory self that most people think, feel, act, perceive, and relate. The one thing the illusory separate self wants above all else is to recover the peace or happiness that seems to have been lost. In fact, all separate selves are on one single mission in life, simply to find happiness, to find peace. And they do so, in most cases, through the attempt to acquire an object, a substance, an activity, a relationship, or a state of mind. However, the peace for which the imaginary separate self is seeking doesn't lie in any of these. It lies in its source. That is why all religions and spiritual traditions, in one way or another, recommend this turning around of the attention towards its source, this falling back of the mind into the heart. If we conceive of this ever-present, unlimited being that we essentially are as something called God, then what is being spoken of here will be called the practice of the presence of God. If it is conceived as the self. It will be called self-inquiry or self-remembering.